One is a staple of the early horror genre, the other is a staple of the modern parody genre. Frankenstein. They Remade It. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
Just enjoying finally the onset of fall. You know, I was able to actually go outside in a long sleeve shirt, so I'm happy.
It hit pretty fast here. It was like one day it was literally below 60, and I got to work, which I get to work already. It's dark out because I get to work at like 6:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I should have brought a coat. I didn't know that I would have to bring a coat, so
yeah. So I'm happy.
Like that. Oh yeah, you love the cold. I prefer the hot.
Yeah. I mean, hey, but with the benefit of, you know, autumn means Halloween.
Yes, it does mean that. That's the one benefit of colder months is Halloween.
Yes, the spooks are upon us, as, you know, this episode and the next will illustrate.
Spook season, yes. Rather. I'm already getting caught up on the Charlie Brown Halloween special and the Garfield one, and
I haven't seen the Garfield one. I didn't know there was one.
Oh yeah, it's way spookier than the Peanuts one, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it's Garfield. I feel like that's inherent.
There's like a dead guy. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a demonic pumpkin, sort of, in Charlie Brown.
It's not demonic. What?
I don't know.
Is that like a robot chicken sketch?
I don't know. I mean, like, I wouldn't be surprised. It's like, you know, they never really go into the great pumpkin's, you know, nature, do they? I don't know. It's been a while.
I don't think so. I think it's just an implication that Linus is stupid.
I mean, like, yeah, okay, fair enough.
I don't really... He can be smart, but he's also stupid.
I mean, fair enough. Jesus. But do you want to go in with what you've been watching? Because mine's going to be pretty light. I'll just, you know, I'll admit that up front.
All right. Well, yeah, sure, I'll go with it. So this is the first October in a while where I'm not actively
I'd say it's been about 12 months since the last one, but continue.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Okay, 11 months, technically.
If you would let me get to it, this is the first one in a while for me in which I have not partaken of a lot of horror movies. I usually do that constantly throughout October, but this time I decided I'd just go through and complete a bunch of horror games instead. So I've been doing that. That being said, I have watched 2 movies. They're just not horror films. The first one is I rewatched Taxi Driver. I saw it was on Netflix. I didn't know it was on Netflix.
And I didn't know either.
And you know, it's very pertinent right now. It has a lot of similarities to the Joker film that is currently out.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, you know what, Taxi Driver's topical. Might want to bring that back as well and put that out there. You know,
just to be aware of it.
A very similar character. Maybe just I feel like most people are smart enough to be like, yeah, this is just a fun movie or whatever, not a person to look up to. But
right, exactly.
I know there are some Travis Bickle stans out there, so I'm sure there are also Joker stans. That's the society we live in. I hate to say.
We live in a society, as the joke goes, or whatever.
Exactly. That was the punchline that he told that got him tomatoed.
Hooray.
I haven't seen the movie. That's not going to be the next one. Just spoiler.
Joker 2, we live in a society.
Joker 2, the joke. The punchline, finally. No, so I rewatched that. And I also I didn't watch anything new. I also rewatched Akira, and that's just because I wanted to look at it again.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, really like the animation.
Also, like, surprisingly apt for nowadays when you get right down to it.
Oh, if you're talking about like a militarized state and the world of the future and
militarized state, the cancerous nature of modern technology, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely, no. Everything old is once become new.
Yep. Or rather, motherfuckers have been predicting this shit for a while, and we are seriously still not learning the lessons.
Yeah, things are constantly happening. It can be like, are you kidding me? Are we doing this now? Is this what we're doing?
Or rather, like, even if we do learn the lessons, the people who should learn the lessons didn't. Or they just don't care.
We should have listened to media predictions years ago. They were warning us this whole time, but we were too foolish.
Curse us. Curse us all.
Did Simpsons predict Hollow Earth?
If I see, like, I'll be real. I know you and, like, Nick and everybody love Simpsons a whole bunch. I'm getting tired of the whole Simpsons predicted this bullshit where it's like, all right, look, get right down to it, fine, that's kind of weird, but I'm tired of seeing all these things.
Well, I got tired of it after I saw the first one because I'm like a hardcore fan of The Simpsons, give me an episode and I can tell you what season it's in fan of The Simpsons. And a lot of those things that go around, like, are straight up not true. It's like someone saw a screenshot and made up a plot to an episode that never existed. They're like, they predicted Antifa. And I'm like, no, they didn't.
And also, how do you what do you mean they predicted that? That's just a thing. Antifa just means anti-fascist, you dumbasses.
Any buzzword to get it out. Whatever, I don't care. I'm just sick of seeing them, that's all. So what have you been not watching this week?
Well, a whole lot of not watching everything, I guess.
Wow, that's awesome. Did you not watch Dumbo?
Oh, I still haven't done that. No, like I've been in the process of moving once again because I got a better job in the city. Getting the fuck out of Dodge.
The big city.
Pretty much. So, that's pretty much been my life for the last, 3 weeks. Beyond that, I haven't consumed a whole lot of media at all. It's been pretty dull around here. I've been kind of running ragged, other than what we've watched for this week, obviously. But beyond that, I don't think there's been anything new, which is surprising. Normally, I at least catch a glimpse of something, but nope.
You normally have more than I do.
I know, that's weird. I haven't even watched TV or anything. I played some of the same games I keep rotating throughout. I have that old Shadow of Mordor game that came out a while back.
The sequel.
Yeah. That and the Watch Dogs 2. Those are the ones I tend to flip back and forth between because they're just long. But beyond that, I've been pretty much a bum.
Well, media is media. As long as you absorb it and please the corporate masters, then you'll be fine and you won't be cold. That's the whole point of this.
Hooray!
Yay.
Yeah, this got depressing. But hey, on the subject of depression, let's get into some existential depression with Frankenstein. Hey!
Whoa, exciting.
Nothing says the horror season like existential horror.
I love Alice Cooper.
Starting off, we have the 1931 original Frankenstein, directed by James Whale and written by John L. Balderston, and also credited as Mary Shelley for having written the original work, obviously. Opening on the more somber scene of a funeral, the 1931 film rolls straight into the action when Henry Frankenstein, played by Colin Clive, an ambitious medical student, starts to exhume the recently buried corpse, along with the assistance of his humpback assistant, Fritz, played by Dwight Fry. The two then also collect a recently hanged man, but Henry laments the fact that they still need an intact brain before they continue. At Henry's order, Fritz breaks into the lecture hall of one Dr. Waldman, played by Edward Von Sloan, Henry's now former professor, to steal a brain that he has on display. However, Fritz drops the ideal brain is instead forced to take a brain that has once belonged to a deranged killer. Meanwhile, back at his home, Henry's fiancée Elizabeth, played by Mae Clark, and friend/best man Victor, played by John Bowles, are worried for Henry's well-being and go off to find him. They meet with Dr. Waldman, who tell him of Henry's near-crazed intentions to create life from dead tissue. The three go off to an abandoned tower, which Henry has made into his laboratory, to bring him home for his health and to finally get married. Although interrupting him in the middle of his experiment to raise his now completed creature from the dead, Henry allows them to stay and to observe. Henry subjects the now formed creature to controlled electrical shock from the storm raging outside, and successfully brings it to life, raving about his success like a madman. Hence the it's alive, etc., etc. Elizabeth and Victor return home to inform Henry's father, Baron von Frankenstein, played by Frederick Kerr, that Henry won't be returning yet so he can finish his experiment. The Baron balks at this and goes off to get him himself. Dr. Waldman stays behind with Henry to assist him, as we see the two raising the newborn creature, played by Boris Karloff, in order to walk and communicate. However, the creature quickly loses control at the sight of fire and is restrained. Fritz then proceeds to torment the newly born creature with fire before being killed and straight up hanged by it. Soon after, the Baron arrives to take Henry home, leaving Waldman to kill the creature and take care of the experiment's details. The creature instead, however, kills Waldman and escapes, along the way also unintentionally drowning a young girl named Maria, played by Marilyn Harris. On the day of his wedding, Henry comes to find Elizabeth in shock after the creature had actually broken in through her window and almost killed her himself. He, along with the now enraged villagers over the death of the young Maria, set off to find and properly kill the creature themselves. He has one final encounter with him in the mountains of the village. The creature, however, quickly overpowers him and drags him to a windmill and throws him from the top. Henry thankfully survives and is quickly escorted away, while the villagers set the windmill ablaze, taking the creature with it. The film ends with Henry recovering at his home with Elizabeth at his side, with his father and various assistants looking onward. Now on to Young Frankenstein from 1974, directed by Mel Brooks and written by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks. Young Frankenstein opens on an already altered tone as we see the young man Frederick Frankenstein, played by Gene Wilder, as an accredited medical professor giving a lecture. In it, he rails on his grandfather, the infamous Victor Frankenstein, for his theories and efforts in creating life and inadvertently a monster, going so far as to deny his actual pronunciation of his last name in order to create a difference between the two. At the end of his lecture, he's approached by a man delivering the now exhumed will of his great-grandfather, Baron von Frankenstein, giving him the need to travel to his Transylvania estate. He says goodbye to his incredibly vain fiancée, Elizabeth, played by Madeline Kahn, and sets off. Upon arriving in Transylvania, he is greeted by Igor, played by Marty Feldman, and Inga, played by Terry Garr, his personal attaché and lab assistant, respectively. They progress to Castle Frankenstein and encounter the castle caretaker, Frau Brücher, played by Cloris Leachman, who guides them to their rooms, and they all turn in for the night. However, Frederick, along with Inga, are both awoken by mysterious music, and along with Igor, follow it to find Victor Frankenstein's secret lab and library. Here, Frederick finds the process of creating life is actually feasible, and is immediately taken with the idea of doing it for himself. He steals an immense corpse to work with, and has Igor acquire a brain, basically with the same process and results as the last time, just without Dr. Waldman involved, and proceed with the experiment. At first believing it to be a failure, the trio return to find the creature, played by Peter Boll, rousing from the slab. He is, however, restrained again after attacking Frederick at the sight of fire, leading to a little situation involving some charades. It's hard to explain in synopsis without going on for hours. The trio are then interrupted by one Inspector Kemp, played by Kenneth Mars, who calls on Frederick at the behest of the local townsfolk who have fears of him being a Frankenstein and fear of him making a brand new monster. Frederick quickly puts his mind at ease and gets him to leave, only to find Frau Brücher releasing the creature and allowing it to escape, revealing that she had once been the original Victor Frankenstein's girlfriend and had typically calmed his own monster with her violin music, hence the mysterious music they heard earlier. The creature goes off and has a pair of comedic encounters with a young girl, not as darkly as the original, and a blind man, played in an uncredited role by Gene Hackman. Soon after, he is recaptured by Frederick and company by using the same music that calmed him earlier, whereupon Frederick realizes his cruelty toward the creature and vows to raise him correctly henceforth, loudly proclaiming that he is a Frankenstein, honoring his grandfather's legacy. Frederick goes on to show his creature in a performance to the local scientific community, but the creature freaks out again and is quickly imprisoned once more. After lamenting by having some sex with Inga, by the way, she's the love interest. It's pretty blunt about it. She has her tits out all the time, yada yada. Anyway, he has sex with her. He is shocked to learn that his fiancée Elizabeth is arriving to meet with him. She is quickly then kidnapped by a now free creature who is immediately smitten with her. Those two then proceed to also have sex, but the creature is then quickly lured away by the same music used to capture him before. He is brought in by Frederick and is subjected to a brand new experiment wherein Frederick gives the creature his own intellect so that the creature can live a normal life at the expense of his own. The film ends with the creature eloquently addressing the now enraged townsfolk and putting their minds at ease that he is a normal man. He then proceeds to go off to live with Elizabeth instead. And Frederick, now lost within his now addled mind, lives with Inga as his wife/caretaker. Inga comments on if Frederick got anything in return for his intellect, and Frederick coyly looks to camera, implying that he received the monster's Schlammstücker, as Inger had put it earlier in the film. The final shot has Igor playing the French horn as the camera pans off and shows a very Mel Brooks-looking gargoyle sitting atop the castle.
Ooh, that ending.
Yeah, it's really a bit different. Not super different. It still involves both the love interest and the main character in bed, but you know.
Yeah, and the monster getting laid, of course.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, it was fire, that was for sure.
And when he was laid to rest. Oh yeah, it was fire.
Boom!
You got it.
We could write for Mel Brooks.
Wit is shit, funny is money. Famous Mel Brooks quote.
I mean, it could be. I wouldn't know.
I've heard Rob Paulson tell that story. He was doing ADR for Spaceballs, and Mel Brooks was looking for a joke name to call one of the Dink characters that gives the main character water. And Rob Paulson proposed that they name it Gunga Dink, and Mel Brooks said, "Yeah, wit is shit, funny is money. Who got something else?" So that's that poll. Okay,
On to the circular bit, I assume.
Yeah, the foliular circular, as they call it. So, after the extremely disappointing full circle last time that had nothing in it, this time we have a couple of entries. We have 7, so it's not that bad.
Hooray.
Yes, hooray indeed. First off, we have 4 for 1931's Frankenstein. Obviously, the most important one is probably Boris Karloff, who was the monster in Frankenstein and was Gaffney in 1932 Scarface.
God, that one was a fucking while ago. We've been talking about doing Frankenstein ever since.
Pretty much, yeah. But that was our first episode, everybody. We may or may not revisit it in the future because that was before we actually had a format. And
quality equipment, or at least approaching quality equipment.
It's a little harder to use to listen to.
Yeah.
Next up we have Eleanor Vanderveer, who was a medical student in Frankenstein and played an uncredited theater goer in Scarface, 1932. Next up we have Inez Palange, I apologize, who was a villager in Frankenstein and was Mrs. Camante in 1932 Scarface.
Oh.
The mother we all love.
Holy crap.
Yes.
I would have thought I would have recognized her.
Me too, but I mean villager, so I guess, you got a mob of people. Sometimes it just blends in.
Yeah. I bet you, like, there's just like a list of, probably back then you could probably just found a list of all actors and we're like, hey, we just call them all in so you can have a mob scene.
Yeah, and was Scarface was a Universal film, wasn't it?
I believe so.
In which case, she was probably an in-house player for Universal, since Frankenstein was also a Universal picture. So they probably just had all those extras available. And finally, for 1931's Frankenstein, we have Francis Ford, who was uncredited and played Hans. Do you remember that character?
Not even slightly. Maybe that was like the father of the little girl. I don't know.
Possibly. Well, he's unnamed or uncredited, so.
Oh well.
For all I know, he's just named in the credits. But he was also uncredited as William Gregory in 1937's A Star Is Born. So 2 uncredited roles for characters that for some reason deserve names.
I mean, all right.
And that I can't remember.
I mean, fuck. It's probably one of those things like someone says like offhand very quickly, just like to flesh out the immediate world, and so they had to keep the name in. So it's like, oh damn it, now we have to pretend like this is a named character.
Ah, crap. When they make the A Star Is Born compendium in 50 years, they're gonna have a full half-page bio for this guy.
Yeah.
It's like that podcast where they watched Grown Ups like every single day.
Oh, yeah, you told me. I remember that one.
They start making up backstories for background characters. The dream.
I feel like that really just does sound like it's both a dream and like a vision of hell.
Oh, it's got Adam Sandler in it. It's definitely hell.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving right along, we have 3 for Young Frankenstein, 1974. First up, our main man Richard Haydn was Gerard Falkstein in Young Frankenstein and was the voice of the caterpillar in 1951's Alice in Wonderland.
Oh.
Next up we have Arthur Tovey, who was a member of the Angry Mob in Young Frankenstein and plays Elderly Man in Alumni Receiving Line in 1996's The Nutty Professor. So... The big party that they're at the end when Eddie Murphy gives that speech. He's one of the old guys in line, waiting to receive something, a document, an honorary degree. I don't know.
Nah, who fucking knows?
I don't remember. That was like 3 episodes ago.
Yeah, we can't remember that far. God damn it!
That's almost like half of our life ago. And finally, we have a big one, an MVP for... He has 3 credits. 3!
Holy shit.
Arthur Mallet, or Arthur Mallet, I'm still uncertain how to pronounce that, was a village elder in 1974's Young Frankenstein. There were only 2, so take your pick. I'm not sure which one it was. He was the graveyard keeper in 1978's Halloween. And he was the voice of Mr. Aegis in The Secret of Nim.
Holy shit.
Well, yeah, he's been around. I'm sure we brought him up on that episode that we did on The Secret of Nim. I just don't remember.
It rings a bell a little bit.
Yes, but that's all we have for Full Circle. I think I made up for it a little bit. Last time there was nothing. Blank slate.
I'm still shocked at that one.
There's one coming up in the future that I haven't done the research for yet, but I suspect we might be getting another empty one. I'm not positive.
Yeah. You got any? Yeah, I'm still obviously recovering from the most amount of speaking I ever do every week. So, you got a starting point to lead us in?
Yeah. Okay. So. I don't want to get into huge general topics necessarily, but I do want to say this, is that Young Frankenstein, among other Mel Brooks films like Spaceballs or Blazing Saddles, is one of those movies that I didn't grow up watching, but I did watch once or twice when I was younger, and I did enjoy it quite a lot. This time around, I can't say I found it all that funny.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Blazing Saddles since then, and I'm still a fan. And I've seen Spaceballs since I was a kid, and I really do not like Spaceballs. I have some problems with it, aside from just not thinking it's funny. I think a lot of the jokes are just poorly written.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd put Young Frankenstein probably between those, because I didn't really laugh. I didn't find it funny, but I thought the jokes were alright. I guess my humor's changed. I've grown out of a lot of those jokes that Mel Brooks does. And again, it's not bad. It's not like Spaceballs joke telling, or like Dracula Dead and Loving It that's just horrible altogether. but yeah, I can't say I found it all that funny, except for maybe one or two things in it that I'd have to think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting for me to think back on. Like, I've seen this movie a number of times, though to my memory, I don't think I'd ever actually seen all the way through to the end until this time around. Like, I don't think I ever actually saw the ending. But yeah, I've watched this one a lot since I was young. I think my brother first showed it to me. I was like, oh, this is freaking hilarious. And I still find it really funny. I didn't necessarily like actively laugh out loud for it, because just like I've seen a lot of comedies up since then, and I've seen this one before. But I gotta say, like, at the very least, I think it's very clever. I think it's one of the few examples of parody done pretty much quintessentially well. Like, even Blazing Saddles is obviously it itself is a parody as well, but it's kind of its own thing. It still has its own story going on. It's just like kind of a semi-generic Western, whereas this one literally took what is quintessentially the beginning of sci-fi horror and sci-fi in general, and made it into something completely hilarious and still like cohesive. It didn't just insult it all the way down, kind of like Spaceballs does. Like, where Spaceballs literally, it just is like, hey, what if we took all this stuff from this super popular movie, and just like made it ridiculous and insulted every aspect of it, to the point where, even the main character, we were warned we couldn't use Han Solo's outfit, so we used Indiana Jones's outfit.
Yeah.
And so, like, I definitely like this one more because it kind of does show, not necessarily a greater skill to the craft, but it definitely shows like the versatility of what parody can really be. Because it just, because comparing that to obviously the original, which it's meant to emulate as much as possible, right down to the shot style and the actually black and white film. It just does it brilliantly. Because just even in the original, just because like I should also say the original, I was kind of shocked at how modern it felt when I first started watching it. I was like, oh, I've seen all these shot styles before in like more recent films, like the shot style and the composition and the setup and ending of scenes. It's like this feels a lot different than what we normally do, than what we normally watch. This old.
Oh,
like
definitely.
There's like shit going on, and like there's a consistent progression of action from beginning to end, and rather than there being just long drawling moments of people explaining modern bits of history or science or anything. They pretty much glaze over that and go like, no, let's just give you a quality product. Which I guess is just kind of why the movie's only an hour long, which I did not expect.
Yeah, there's a lot of great aspects about those old Universal horror films, and we could have done an episode on any of them, and we would have encountered similar things to it.
Yeah,
we could have done Wolfman, we could have done Dracula. Hell, we could have compared Dracula to the Spanish version of Dracula, which were only about a year apart, but they're so different, and they're both really good on their own. It's hard to go wrong with those old black and white monster films.
Oh my god, could you imagine if we did The Mummy with like Brendan Fraser and shit?
We could.
We honestly could. And then then we could do They Remade It Again with the Tom Cruise one.
Oh god, I have not seen that still, so
it's bad.
Well, I don't like Tom Cruise that much, so
I mean, it's like even like Tom Cruise has been at least in decent things, but this one's bad.
Ugh. That's unfortunate. Who was the Mummy? That was Karloff, right? I believe it was Boris Karloff.
I wouldn't know for sure. I thought you were going to say the Who was the Mummy and the most recent one with Tom Cruise.
No.
I was going to be like, that was not Karloff. It was a woman, first of all.
Karloff was mummified, and that was just actually him.
Yeah.
He was brought back.
They weakened Ernie's him or something. Or is it Bernie's? I don't know.
It's Bernie, but I appreciated the joke nonetheless.
Yeah, there's a fucking reference.
Good reference. So it sort of goes to what you were saying, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about this before. But when you're judging Mel Brooks films, I think that he did his best work when it was a generalized parody. And I think that's why Young Frankenstein fits so squarely in the middle for me, where I recognize the humor and I think the jokes are good, but I'm still not laughing, and there's some things that I would have improved. Giving notes all the way in the future.
Right? Yeah, it's like us being our armchair cinematographers.
Yeah, because I totally am qualified for that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we know things like mise en scène or whatever.
yeah, the Frenchy stuff. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
But for say Blazing Saddles, there's homages and references to specific westerns in there, but the movie as a whole is not a parody of a specific western movie. It's sort of a generalized take on the genre, and I think that works very well because it lends itself to more jokes. And Spaceballs is not really a parody of the sci-fi genre. It's a parody of Star Wars specifically. It'll have a joke here or there. It has the alien scene in the bar where he does the Michigan J. Frog routine. So they do have moments like that, but as a whole, it's less a parody of sci-fi stuff and more a parody of Star Wars. So they kind of put themselves in a bit of a corner, I think. For Young Frankenstein, they're not doing a specific genre. They're sort of doing a movie, but they're following up to it, so they have their own original ideas alongside the parody of the original film. So it doesn't feel nearly as cornered. It feels like there's more places that they can go if they choose to. And
Which is also... Oh, yeah, sorry, you go on.
I was just going to say, I think that works in its favor compared to other Brooks films.
And it is actually interesting seeing like how they did the whole like follow up to the original, because you get right down to it, I think it's more trying to directly follow up to the book rather than the original film, because even in the original film it's Henry Frankenstein rather than the original book's Victor Frankenstein. And so it's just it's weird how a lot of details really point to the fact that the 74 version is actually more accurate to the book in a lot of ways. It's odd. It's just like there are a few other things I couldn't remember. I think it like mostly with Frederick's attitude compared to like Victor's originally and that sort of thing. It's like there were subtle things I just remember that are like, oh, this is very interesting.
Yes,
I guess obviously for us that the book doesn't tend to matter that much, but having since read the book for since having first seen Young Frankenstein, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have that reference point, but like, it's not like I read the book before this. I read the book once before, and I honestly thought it was a bit of a bore, so I wasn't going to do that.
Oh, again. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's very dry, but it's like when it's something that is the first one of a genre, I guess that's to be expected.
To a degree, I didn't think Dracula was all that dry, but
well, yeah. But Gothic horror already existed up to that point. It's just that was one of the benchmark centers.
Yeah. And that was also Mary Shelley's first actual work.
Right.
So I get it. But I guess that was obviously I have tons of little points in comparison, like things that we can get into, but that was sort of my main point was just I remember, and folks, this is what nostalgia will do to you. I remember the movie being funnier than it actually is, or at least what I perceive it to be, because humor is subjective. That's how it works.
Yeah, I definitely remember it being, well, obviously, like when I first saw it, I thought it was hilarious, but I definitely still see it's like how clever it is in a lot of things, and just like how it's able to take something that's so inherently dark and make it, make light of it.
Yeah. Ooh, you know what? This is a good point for this. I don't want to harp on it too long, or else the whole episode will just be this topic. But it is interesting because we just talked about it at the top of the show, but The Simpsons, which is a show that I dearly, truly love, I feel they've lost their way a bit in the way they tell jokes because they don't trust the audience nearly enough. Mm-hmm. Whereas, let's say Homer would be in bed with Marge in season 4, and they'd be talking and he'd say something crazy and Marge would just go with it. Where in seasons now, Homer would say something crazy, she would either like comment on it and be like, what you just said is insane, or she would like look to the audience. And there's like a lack of trust in the writer's room where they're writing for the show, they do a joke they think's funny, and then it's like, we should probably put an indicator here that it was a joke. We don't have a laugh track. So we need something to tell the audience that was just funny or crazy.
They've learned some bad habits from Big Bang Theory.
It's very unfortunate. Well, it's been happening for a while, but I think it's a decline in just that specific aspect. And The Simpsons is a completely different style of humor. It's not entirely parody. They do parodies, but that's not the nature of the show. It's a satire. And it came 20 years later, so things changed, society changed, things evolved. But I can't help but notice when I was watching Young Frankenstein that there are jokes and bits that I think would really benefit for trusting the audience more. Which, again, it came out in 74, so maybe they couldn't necessarily do that. Maybe they'd make a joke and the audience would be like, I don't get it. So they had to. For example, I think Marty Feldman is really enjoyable as Igor, whatever.
Yeah, but I was like, my main point of it is saying, like, I think he's my favorite part of that entire film, honestly.
He's great, but I think he looks at the camera way too much. As like a wink to the audience without actually winking. And it does bother me a little bit. There's other things like when Inspector Kemp is throwing darts with Frankenstein. Why did I forget his name? That's the title of the... Whatever. Kemp is throwing darts with Frankenstein, and Frankenstein misses, and they all hit Inspector Kemp's tires. And as he's driving away, you can see it sort of wobble and hang low, and it's making some noise. And it's like, that's the joke. That's funny. Like, you didn't expect that until you see it. But then the camera zooms in on the tires to show you the darts are in there. And I was like, we didn't need that, did we? But, again, it being made in 74, maybe they did need that. And I'm just looking at it through a modern lens. I don't know. But I think I would enjoy it more if there were less of those moments in the movie.
I gotcha. And I definitely see what you mean. Marty, like, the whole, like, breaking the fourth wall thing can only kind of work so many times. At least with Marty Feldman's case. Yeah, there aren't a whole lot, like, I think Marty Feldman's the only one who does end up really breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, except at the end of the film. At the end of the film, Peter Boyle, who plays the monster, looks at the camera, and then Gene Wilder, I guess, does it sort of too. When they're both in bed.
Yeah,
and then
that's
they
just
kiss.
how it goes.
Yeah,
I gotta love sexual humor, and which is like that one's probably my biggest gripe with the humor. Is that I think I'm just not huge on sexual humor in general, but it's definitely a big thing with Mel Brooks specifically, and it does tend to kind of rub thin, especially with how it ends up just kind of boiling down actors' skills just to make a sex joke, especially when it's usually at the expense of one of the actresses. It's like, that's a kind of a continuing trend throughout. I haven't seen Spaceballs in a long time, so I wouldn't know specifically, but like definitely with, Blazing Saddles and with this, just the kind of the treatment of the female characters is just like a little bit like,
what do you want from him? He's a horny old man.
Well, exactly.
I'm trying to remember Spaceballs specifically. I don't necessarily remember the female characters getting a lot of that, but they did obviously have like dick jokes, like the lightsaber droops. It's haha, I get it.
Right.
I've seen that a million places. I couldn't tell you if that's the first example of it though or not, because I saw Spaceballs way after it came out, based on my age.
Yeah.
I mean,
same. But yeah, it's just like, that's probably my only real qualm with Young Frankenstein, is just like, I just have an issue with just, devaluing like actresses for what they're doing in general, because like literally there's only 3 female characters in the film. One is vain and a sex object, the other is ditzy and a sex object, and the other is so unpleasant there's literally an audio gag centered around it. So it's like,
yeah,
that's a little, and plus the 3 of them all together basically have no arc whatsoever. Like, you learn a couple things about Brooker, but beyond that, that's kind of it. Elizabeth has probably the worst end of it, where her the most you could say was her arc was her having sex with the monster.
Yeah.
And so it's like, ugh.
At least Madeline Kahn is a decent enough actress. And she was in Blazing Saddles. She was in History of the World. So she did other Mel Brooks stuff too, and she had she would have had a birthday not too long ago, September 29th or 28th, I think.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, that's nice. But she's gone, so.
Yeah, God rest.
And as much as I love Marty Feldman, I mean, Gene Wilder's good. I think I have to take that back a bit because I'm not too big on Terry Garr as a character, but that's primarily because she is, like, the sex character. It's like that's what Mel Brooks created that role for, essentially. That's her whole purpose.
One of the first jokes with her involves a rack, so you know.
Yeah, but Madeline Kahn is great, and Cloris Leachman is fantastic. This has got to be her second greatest role after Beavis and Butthead Do America. So she's a fine actress.
Well, there's a thing I didn't know was a thing, but you know.
The Beavis and Butthead movie?
Well, no, I knew it was a thing. I just didn't know she was in it.
Oh yeah, she's the old woman on the bus that they end up on going to Vegas. She can't wait to play the slots. And Beavis and Butthead keep thinking she says sluts. Like, this old lady's awesome.
Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I think, you know, beyond the pretty paper-thin acting for the female roles, I think everyone else does a pretty good job, especially Gene Hackman in his little uncredited role. Which I've realized when I've watched this back again, like, for so long I've seen so many movies that Gene Hackman's in, and I saw this movie so early on, that every time I'd see him again, I'd be like, oh, it's that guy? I don't really recognize him, though. Where is he from? I know him, but I don't know from where. And I watched this back again, I was like, all the pieces fit back together.
Oh, wait a minute. He was the blind man, wasn't he?
Exactly.
Okay, I was sitting here, like, trying to think.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah,
Gene Hackman? Like, I don't remember who he was.
Yeah, he was uncredited in the film. He was there. He was like, he got paid for like a cup of coffee or something, some ridiculous stuff like that.
Well, that was before his big turn as Lex Luthor in the Superman film, like 5 years later.
Right. There was some other detail about like how I think he was actually there for a while, and they did a whole bunch of jokes. But I think with some audience early showing, they had to cut out a lot of jokes, a lot of his included.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, because apparently the movie was almost twice as long originally, but they ended up having to the preview. They were like, oh, barely anyone's laughing more than a couple of times. Let's cut like most of this shit out. So.
I wonder what more they could have even done, because it feels pretty.
Apparently there was like
a lot of jokes.
Yeah, apparently there was something like 3 times as many jokes, but like 2/3 of them just didn't land.
Okay, well then I get them out of there, I guess.
Yeah, so turned out pretty well, but yeah, it's like pretty good. You know, Gene Wilder is as unhinged as always, which I love, but I gotta give it back. I gotta bring the credit back to the original. My God, the Colin. Dang it! I just lost his name. Yes, thank you, Colin Clive. Holy shit! Like, people go on and on about, like, you know, doing the "It's Alive" impression just for years afterwards, and I always thought it was like, all right, people are just kind of going on about it because this was like an early horror movie. It kind of just set the immediate bar, but fucking Colin Clive is like one of the best performances I think I've seen on this show. Like, it's just so, like, you really do see the actual struggle of the whole character going, like, his arc throughout it all, and just seeing how he's a genuinely ambitious character and not literally just out of his mind like so many people portray him. And it's just so cool to see his whole process.
Oh yeah, he's totally he's like an actual person with these feelings and thoughts, and it's not like he fits into the mad scientist archetype because he kind of invented it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that character invented it, but he's not really mad. Like, he's pulled away from it and is genuinely happy. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm glad that I'm away from it. Whereas another type of movie would be like he's feigning it and he desperately tries to get back to work.
Right.
It's like, if Young Frankenstein had made any of those choices with Gene Wilder leaving, they would have probably done a Lost Weekend style parody where all the neon signs fly by his head talking about building a monster. He's like, I gotta get back to work. So
It's like he goes to a gym where it says like, you know, where there's a bodybuilding competition. And he's like, no, not like this. You're
I'm
doing
not
it
strong
wrong.
enough.
I'm the only bodybuilder here. You're all phonies. You're muscle builders at best.
Why didn't Mel Brooks hire us?
What's that? Sorry.
I said, why didn't Mel Brooks hire us?
I don't think there was a big enough pen for writing a script, like a small enough pen for writing a script when you're a sperm.
Oh yeah. And I know it's just another archetype, but I always like the stuffy British character, and Frederick Kerr as the Baron is great as this Commander McBragg like character. It's just like, well, yes, quite. It's another woman, you see.
Yeah, he really, like, he balanced it out perfectly. Like, I was worried that the whole thing was gonna be, because so many of the older movies we watch are just like so set in their tone that it just gets boring. But him being there actually added a bit of levity that it really needed, and it kind of balanced it out perfectly.
Yeah,
it's just like in so many, like, I can remember the last time in a movie, like one of these older movies when I usually have the subtitles on, I saw him say yeah instead of yes, and I was literally shocked. I was like, wait a minute, a proper character who isn't like a gangster or something saying yeah? Instead of just, yes, quite. It's like he was just, yeah, it's another woman. I was like, oh, okay, it's like a normal fucking human being. Thank God.
He has normal thoughts and feelings. Like, I love the frankly unnecessary subplot about how much he hates the Burgomaster.
Yeah.
He just walks in, he's like, well, fuck you, get out.
It's like, screw you and the horse you rode in on. Yeah, it's like, that is like, him and Colin Clive kind of really just bring just straight up human reactions to everything, which is a very nice, you know, breath of fresh air for a lot of these movies. Even for fucking Young Frankenstein, where it seems like a lot of times, like, it doesn't quite get to be an idiot plot, that being a plot that only progresses by the actions of an idiot, or if the people in it are all idiots. It's actually like, you know, like obviously Young Frankenstein doesn't quite get to that point, but it's not too far off.
Yeah.
But it very naturally avoids all that. All the actions that all the characters take feel normal. Like, you know, leave Dr. Waldman in charge of the experiment. That's not unreasonable. It's considering, you know, Henry's mental health and that sort of thing. And then just how everything progressed from that point onward. And, like, you know, obviously Frederick Kerr's, or the Baron's, very real reactions to, like, oh, my son is still screwing around off in the middle of nowhere, supposedly all just doing experiments and shit. Oh, no, that's bullshit. I'm gonna go get him. And then when he actually does finds him as a wreck, and it's immediately like, oh my god, my son's in trouble. I need to help him. I need to help lay him down. He actually has a very real, like, fatherly reaction to the whole thing, rather than, what is all the ridiculous nonsense? Who is this on this slab? Is this other woman you've been seeing? And it's just, I was very surprised. I was very, you know, refreshed to see, like, oh, you can actually have a good plot being set up by very human reactions. Like, very genuine reactions to all this. Which is sad to say, honestly.
It might have been nice if he had been like, ooh, is this the girl you've been seeing on the slab right here? Under these sheets?
Which I guess by then the monster was already alive. But
she's mighty thick, my boy. Good job.
Yeah. Sorry, Elizabeth, but I understand why he was leaving now.
The wedding is off.
And it's back on with this fine woman.
And now that we're sort of, especially when we're talking about the Baron, there is one major gripe that I do have with the original Frankenstein, and it's honestly a gripe that I have with probably all films before 1950, in that they don't know how to end the movie. They always have horrible endings.
You cut to... That's exactly what I had written as well. We both agreed on that one hard.
It's like, let's all drink while my son lays in bed. It's like, okay, why?
And, like, I wouldn't... I even extend it beyond that. Like, I think the point from where Elizabeth is attacked onward, it just kind of sputters out. Like, again, this is just kind of coming from the knowledge of having read the book. Like, in the book, it ends, like, it pretty much, it goes from, you know, the monster comes back and actually kills Elizabeth, and Victor goes on a hunt across the fucking planet all the way to the Arctic to hunt the monster down, and eventually dies with him of pure exhaustion, stating, "Do not do what I have done. Be responsible for your actions. Don't create monsters just out of ambition," yada, yada, yada. And it's a very poignant ending. Versus this one, it just kind of, okay, monster has killed kid. Everyone get pissed off. Let's go burn it. And that's it. Like, there's no real, like, there's all this build-up for Henry's arc. There's all this genuine, like, growth as people. And it just kind of stops. Like, there's no final message. Like, even for older movies, that's kind of not par. Like, normally they have, like, some really ham-handed message at the very end. It's like, you know, don't commit crime or some bullshit. I don't know. But it's like, this one is like literally just, well, you know, he's just in bed. And now the Baron's having a drink.
Yeah, that's little boy's tuckered out.
Yeah. It's like
he had a big day.
Got thrown from a fucking windmill, but, you know, he's just chilling.
Yeah, busy day. He needs his rest.
It totally lost me at that point. Because, like, and I know that's the big iconic scene, the windmill and the mob and everything, but, like, I was hoping that going into this, having been shocked throughout the rest of it, I was hoping by the end of it, it would have been like, okay, I'm sure that's always been played up and not nearly as reactionary as they seem it to be. It's like, nope, it's just as blunt and kind of pointless feeling as, well, not pointless feeling, but, like, kind of actionless feeling as all other times it's been done.
Yeah.
It's just like, people pissed off, torches, yada yada, move on.
And I got a question. I don't know where I pulled this from. It's obviously not the movie, and I can't remember if it's the book, but I have this memory in my head of the ending being Frankenstein, like, on a raft, adrift. Where am I pulling that from? Because that's not how the book ends, and that's not how the movie ends, but
I really don't know. Like, I know there was a sequel eventually called Son of Frankenstein.
Oh, they're Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, House of Frankenstein, but I don't believe it's any of those either. Hell, either Son or House of Frankenstein, the castle, like, is demolished. It, like, crumbles. Yeah. And that's how that one ends. I've seen them all. It's just been here and there, so I can't remember.
I mean, it almost sounds more like an ending to, like, one of the fucking Planet of the Apes movies.
Sounds like an SNL skit. Like,
really, yeah.
I don't know. He chases him to the Arctic, and that's how Frankenstein's monster escapes. I almost fell prey to the mortal sin.
All right.
But I don't know. But I was watching the film, and I was like, I've seen this before. I don't believe that's how it ends.
Maybe there's a different cut. I mean, like, I looked it up. It didn't seem like there was, but there may have been some other movie involved with it. I don't know.
I'll have to look into it later. It's not a big sticking point. I was just wondering if you had any knowledge.
Nope, I am kind of devoid of that one.
All right, that's fine. Although I am interested, since you mentioned Son of Frankenstein, to bring up some loose ties there, because Young Frankenstein is essentially Son of Frankenstein in that it's a follow-up to the original Frankenstein, but on the whole it's a parody of the original movie, and less a parody of Son. But there are some connective tissues there. Primarily Igor or Igor is such a name that is stuck with us as a culture for, like, the servant character, you know. Bulging eyes, has a humpback, wobbles around, sometimes says, "Yes, master."
Yes, master.
Yes, but I believe that character originated in Son of Frankenstein or in Ghost of Frankenstein. One of those two.
It was. I only learned this from the trivia, but it was Son of Frankenstein that he first showed up.
Okay. So it originates from that. But that is a tie connecting the two together, and I can't tell if that's a pull/nod to the fact that Young Frankenstein is about the Son of Frankenstein, and just like, yeah, we're acknowledging it at this point, or if rather in 1974, a character named Igor or Igor, whatever, had already become old hat and was something that you just knew as like an archetype for a character. I don't know which one it is.
I feel like it was more like the Occam's razor thing, where it's like everyone just kind of accepted it as fact. Like, it had been so long, and I guess Igor had just stuck around for whatever reason. He probably was promoted in some kind of marketing or something more than fucking Fritz. Because, like, Fritz is a pretty generic name for the whole situation. So it's like, I'm not surprised that one got forgotten. Versus, like, creating an actual character out of this assistant that in the original movie just gets pretty just straight up killed. Which, also, just a side note I want to point out, the 31 one's fucking dark, man.
It's like, pretty violent. Lots of death.
Yeah, like, the cut I have that I had watched actually included the actual drowning of Maria. I know there's the original theatrical cut right before you actually see it, but even showing the fact that they had shot that in the first place, and then the fact that Fritz was killed and or hanged after he had tormented the creature, and we see his fucking silhouette of it all. It's like, shit, man, modern movies don't, like, rated R movies don't always do that.
Yeah. It's I've definitely seen that cut before, possibly on TV, but it is worth noting the one that I own does have the extremely stark and jarring cut between he throws Maria in, and then it cuts to his face freaking out and he runs away. And that was noticeable when I was watching it. I didn't look to see if there was a deleted scene section on the DVD I own, but I imagine that it is in there somewhere. They just, for some reason, left it out.
I gotcha.
It's like, yeah, just put the movie on the DVD and put it in the box. Who cares?
Fair enough. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just like, I almost wanted to look up how the theatrical cut looked, but then I was like, I actually really like this scene.
Yeah, it's extremely jarring. It's like he throws her in, and immediately, not only do you not see her, but it's him running away. Like, he experienced regret as soon as she left his arms, and he just had to flee.
Of course, then there's also the scene of, like, her father carrying her corpse through the streets, where it's like, all right.
Yeah, but you see it at that point.
Yeah, it's like, at that point, I'd almost say that's darker.
Yeah, which that's a very long scene. Just people dancing, cheering, and...
Just him walking along, just be like, hum-de-dum. Shit sucks.
A merry Oktoberfest. I'm sure that's exactly what he was thinking.
Yeah.
Hum-de-dum, life is horrid.
Oh, the tragedy of Gothic life. Or whatever era it's supposed to be. I don't fucking know.
Hey, buddy, we all got problems. My Stein is empty, you hear?
My comedically oversized Stein. Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho.
Or whatever. I don't fucking know.
No, was that like an Oktoberfest, or was that just, Germans having fun?
I thought it was a celebration for the wedding.
Oh, it might have been.
Yeah, I think the whole thing was that it was a celebration because, like, since, the Baron's son is getting married.
Yeah.
And the Baron seemed to be a pretty chill dude to all the peasants, because he was, like, literally on the balcony saying, like, hope everyone's enjoying yourselves. There's a lot more beer where that came from.
And then they all cheer, everyone gets beer.
Yeah, children included. Which, like, it's Germany. They do their thing.
I do like the scene the Baron is giving some of his friends that exclusive drink. And he's like, don't give any of this to the help. They get the champagne. And I was like, that's still pretty I would imagine him giving them nothing. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I'd be like,
surprised
right.
they got that much. Which, like, I guess kind of goes to show, like, the quality, like, the quality of that guy's character. Or just, like actual characters, like, personal character,
Yeah, they're still less than me, but I want them to get something.
Yeah, it's like, come on. Plus, I'm fucking rich. I own a town, essentially.
Yeah, their blood ain't pure, but they got blood.
Yeah.
Do they not think? Do they not feel?
Oh, if we should only have rich people so nice.
The humdrums of barren life. Oh yeah,
that's the sequel.
We had rich people that were that nice. Oh.
Yeah. Which, like,
our problems obviously wouldn't be solved because I'm not asking for a handout, but if they were at least like nice people, then maybe
right.
I'd be more comfortable.
I simply ask that, that roads can get the kind of funding they need, so that they can avoid potholes a bit more often.
The amount of times I almost like broke down on a road on my way to work is staggering.
Yep.
Thankfully, that did
fun.
finally get paved, but it's also a fairly busy road, so I mean, they kind of had to.
Hooray!
Yay! For browbeating the government into doing something they should have done months ago.
Or years.
Or years. What were we talking about?
I don't know, some depressing shit about a monster. Versus the depressing shit about a monster that is the government.
Yeah, what is that? I don't even remember what movie we're doing. Ernest Goes to Camp? Like, what is this?
Yeah, it's close enough. So anyway, I preferred the first one to the first one. I am also just kind of like, I don't want to say I'm struggling to find new points to continue off of, but like at the same time, these are both pretty straightforward. These wear their hearts on their sleeves.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
We don't tend to deal with ones that are both so straightforward. Like the one is straightforward for the fact that just a lot of technology didn't exist at a certain point, and it was only an hour long, and also everyone already knows the story back to front, more or less. And the other is a comedy, and the majority of its runtime is going to be dedicated to comedic bits, which you can't really discuss a whole lot because it's trying to retell a joke in a completely different format.
Yeah.
So it's like the most I can say is, this joke was funny, this joke fell flat, these things made me uncomfortable, these things didn't.
Yeah, that's sort of the risk you run with that, with straight up comedy. And it, like, we discussed the story to an extent, but it's essentially Frankenstein.
Right.
With added bits to it. That's just what it is, and the story isn't that complicated. Like, even a comedy like The Nutty Professor, like, there were a lot of facets to the story, whether they needed to be there or not. So,
science experiment, dude turns into some sexy dude. He has this whole singing situation. There's a whole lot of stuff. Whereas this one, it's guy creates monster freaks out, monster kills people, we kill monster. Or in the case of Young Frankenstein, monster freaks out, doesn't kill people, monster fucks my guy's wife.
We lay monster.
There's several dick jokes. Roll credits.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, there's not much to go with from there. To be honest.
Yeah, which is a shame because this has been such a big one to build up to.
That's one we talked about for a while. There was no fanfare, but like.
Well, no, but even still, it's like, we do ones that are like, the Nutty Professor, which are like not necessarily like aren't underknown, isn't an underknown, but it's like, it's definitely typically an unseen one compared to fucking Frankenstein.
Oh, definitely. I thought you were going to compare Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor to Young Frankenstein. I was like, at this point, they're probably both equal. But no, like, the original Frankenstein is, it's a classic. It's an AFI must-see chart topper. It's like, which, hey, mark that off your AFI 100 films list.
Yeah.
Because now you've seen it.
Yeah, and I've seen it now. It's like, I still don't know. It's just like, and I loved a lot of it building up to it, but, and I've given a lot of praise, but I've also just, like, thinking back on it, really the only things I liked Boris Karloff to an extent, but, like, the thing, like Colin Clive steals the show for me, and it kind of makes everyone else feel really flat by comparison. Like, Elizabeth is barely there. The friend Victor is there even less. Like, he's just kind of an added thing to kind of help propel the plot a little bit more. And, the Baron is a good source of levity. But then beyond that, like, I kind of just, like, and obviously, like, it's a quality-made film. But beyond that, just for the performance and everything, it was kind of like, whatever. And then just, like I said, I wasn't huge on the ending. I pretty much glazed over by the end at that point.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare that to, like, Young Frankenstein really did hold my attention the entire way through, either just from Gene Wilder's energy and being able to play off with Marty Feldman. It's it just was able to keep me going, and I was, even if I wasn't laughing, I was still engaged. And
Which is a fair point, and it's unfortunate because Boris Karloff is a great actor. We've seen that before. He just, I mean, as the monster, like, what is he going to do? I feel like that comes with the territory a bit. He's just there. But also, you can take, like, The Mummy. He's really engaging in The Mummy because he seems like an actual threat. The monster kills people in the original, and it is stark, and it's dark and depressing, but, I mean, he's up against an entire mob, whereas The Mummy doesn't have that problem. Like, he's trapped with a couple of people, so there's true tension and suspense. And when Boris Karloff gets going as, like, a person, like in Scarface, or even something stupid like Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer Boris Karloff, like, he has more he has more that he gets to do.
Right. But even then, like, compare that again to the with Young Frankenstein. Peter Boyle was a delight. I loved everything he was doing. I didn't comment on him a whole bunch, but he was dopey but also, like, genuine with what he was doing. So it kind of lended itself to an actual personality this time around.
Right. Well, he gets more. He does get more to do too. He has the putting on the Ritz, and he gets horny and.
Yeah, it's like it is hard to compare the two. Like, they actually did shit with the character.
Yeah.
Or rather, they gave it a character.
Yes, they gave it a character. Very important.
But I guess I don't know. Like we've said it a few times before. What else is there to say? It's like one is so burned into the collective consciousness as, like, the staple of old horror, and the other one is, fucking Young Frankenstein. It's set a bar with a bunch of with parody in a lot of ways. Obviously not completely. It's obviously there are better movies, but still.
Yeah.
And I know you're not as big a fan of it, but I still love it.
Yeah, and like I said, I recognize the humor in it. It's not like I think it's poorly written necessarily. Well, there's some parts, but as a whole, I think it's fine.
Right.
I just didn't find it funny, and personally for me, like, even if I'm actively watching it because I like the look of it or I like an actor, if it's a comedy that's not making me laugh, that's kind of a big knock for it for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty big condemnation. Yeah, like, for me, it's as long as I'm engaged, even if I'm not laughing, if, like, I give a shit about the story, or at the very least I think something's clever enough to keep me going, it's enough for me.
That's fair. So,
plus, I've seen this movie a bunch of times before, so it's hard to continue laughing.
True. I mean, there are Simpsons episodes that I truly love and that I find hilarious, but I'm not laughing out loud at them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so I do get it. But I think where we end that on is I like the original Frankenstein better.
Mm-hmm.
I like the direction. I like the tone of the film. I just like Universal horror films. And, I mean, there are tons of people, like, horror actors from that era that I enjoy more than Boris Karloff, like Lugosi or Lon Chaney Jr. Vincent Price is a little later, but, like, you get those people and they're sort of staples. And Boris Karloff is a good actor, but I think in terms of the horror movies, he's less known for being Boris Karloff and more so known because, oh yeah, that's Frankenstein's monster, or yeah, that's The Mummy. Like,
yeah.
So,
yeah,
there's some pedigree there.
I mean, yeah, and I can't deny that with it, but it's the kind of situation where there's so many bright spots of that movie that I can't call it anything other than, a staple and a masterpiece. But then the more I kind of look back through it, the more I'm just like, I was engaged, or, like, I enjoyed specific parts, but on the whole, I don't think I'd watch it again. It's kind of hard to, like, and I know that's not always the mark of a great film. Like,
well, yeah,
one of the greatest films I'll still defend is Birdman, but I still probably would only have seen it the one time. But I couldn't really think of a reason to come back to see it at some point. Like, if someone told me, oh, hey, we're watching horror movies for Halloween, we're watching the original Frankenstein, I'd be like, I mean, that's kind of dull when you get right down to it, at least for a movie night, It's like there's a lot of action-packed stuff that we could watch just like as just a binge thing. I know it's a fun thing to watch for like a artistic standpoint, but beyond that, it's like not a whole lot more to write home about.
You guys want to watch like the Night of the Living Dead or something? Like,
yeah, like at least then it's like, okay, shit's going on, and obviously shit goes on in Frankenstein, but it's like it's more kind of punchy and like in the moments rather than consistent action.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just ended up getting, especially with the ending, I got bored by the end, plain and simple. And just, Young Frankenstein, it's like, it's not high art, obviously, but I just think it's just, in general, just kind of better. I definitely enjoyed myself more watching it. It's an original enough comedy that it doesn't get stale. It's punchy enough, and it's consistently just the energy that Gene Wilder brings to the front of it. It's hard to know. I almost feel guilty for liking it more, but I just do. It's just it's fun, and I think it's a genuinely good story, and I think it even still captures a lot of what the original story that Mary Shelley wrote was doing. It's like, this is what would happen if the Dr. Frankenstein actually learned a lesson and actually cared for his monster rather than allowing shit to get completely out of control. And so it's kind of interesting seeing the happy ending version of that rather than all the depressing dark versions. And it's also, pretty funny.
Yeah, it's less a character study because it doesn't need to be. The characters are already established. They just build off of your expectations.
Right.
Which I do get.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's also coming, that's coming from a modern viewpoint, and I'm sure if I had seen Frankenstein originally without ever having seen Young Frankenstein, I probably would have thought it's the bee's knees. But,
yeah.
But just beyond that, I'm just like, it's hard to say I'd watch the original one ever again.
Well, what do you know? This is the first episode in a while in which we both picked different movies.
Yeah, I had a feeling it'd end up that way. I kind of decided that I liked Young Frankenstein more pretty early on, but I had a feeling you'd be a bigger fan of the classic.
Yeah, as long as you didn't decide beforehand.
It's like pretty early on in the middle of this, I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it's gonna be.
That's fair. Well, we
Spooky.
haven't... Yeah, spooky time. We haven't done this in a little while. I don't necessarily know why. I think we just dropped the thread, but I do like the idea. And that's sort of like a recommendation style thing.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about that.
We haven't done it in a while, and I was thinking about it while I was watching Young Frankenstein, because I was like, horror comedy is something that's sort of lost. Like, it's a thread that we have lost, I think.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a parody of a parody. when you right down to it, like horror comedies are like a parody of a parody or something like that, like Scary Movies or something.
Yeah.
By which I mean the Scary Movie franchise. So
yeah, no, I had a feeling.
Okay. But I wanted to say for like Frankenstein, you can go out and do another Universal horror, do The Invisible Man, do the Spanish version of Dracula, get a little crazy, or do like a Hammer film with Vincent Price and Peter Lorre. Those two are really great together. Anything like that. And if you're looking for a horror comedy, it was either the year 2000 or 2001, but The Lost Skeleton of Caladavra is a great send-up of B-horror films. It's shot in black and white. It's about a couple... it's been years since I've seen it, but I remember liking it a whole lot. There's a plastic skeleton that talks and is, like, puppeted around and swung by a wire sometimes. It's a send-up of B-horror in that the actors will talk exactly like actors of that day would in those old B-horror movies. Like, as a scientist, I think we should do this. And there's no winks to the camera. It is what it is. You can tell that it's a parody, but it's completely earnest, and I love it for that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I've also kind of thought of a recommendation for it's sort of a horror comedy, but it's it's a fucking gore fest. I will warn. It is not light on violence,
Oh.
but Cabin in the Woods for a more modern one.
Oh, Cabin in the Woods is great.
Oh yeah, because like and you can pretty much glean this from the trailer, so I don't really consider this a spoiler. But the whole thing of it is, it's basically breaking down a lot of the tropes from old horror movies, like, oh, why is everyone split up in the end? Why do these two people go off to have sex for some reason? It breaks it down and actually sets up actual plot relevant reasons that these things are happening. Like, it's this whole thing centered around this facility that actually releases all the biggest horror monsters in the world. Like, all the big horror stories you've heard, it's because of this one group that's just releasing them, making shit happen. And it's honestly really clever, and also kind of subverts a lot of those tropes as a result. And so it's I've again, fucking gory as fuck, and I did not expect that when I was going into it. But I thought it was hilarious.
It's one of the great twist endings of our time, in that it's not something that comes out of nowhere, because it's a twist in that you don't necessarily expect it, but it leaves a breadcrumb trail throughout the movie so that you can be like an armchair theorist while you're watching the movie. You can have fun, and you can be like, oh, well, what if it's this? What if it's that? Like, the movie is telling you to ask questions before it reveals what's truly going on. And I think those are always the best twists.
Yeah, it actually gives you the opportunity to think about the plot rather than just being like, it gives you the plot.
Yeah. And because The Lost Skeleton is like a goofy horror comedy. If you, similar in the vein of Cabin in the Woods, if you want something that is just straight up comedy but actually does have scary moments and horror moments, you can also go watch Bubba Hotep, which is a great movie starring Bruce Campbell as an aging man who thinks that he's Elvis. And his best friend in the nursing home in which he's imprisoned, which is a wheelchair-bound black man who claims he's JFK, and they fight an evil mummy that has been released in the home and is stealing the soul of residents while they sleep. And that is a really good movie.
Nice.
So, yes, those are our recommendations. I kind of want to try to bring that back a little bit, because I do really like the idea. I just got to think about it beforehand, because I'm not always good on the spot with something like that.
I used to have a bigger lexicon of stuff in my memory that I could just pick from immediately, especially whenever I was just doing notes. But like lately, I've just been like, I have other things going on, and I can't remember always.
I ain't good with no memory no more. So, I think that's where we leave it. We both said what our favorites were. We gave some recommendations. We talked. We laughed. We cried. We hurled. Is there anything else? Any final thoughts?
Nope.
All right. Well,
not that I can think of.
Well,
I was in that moment. I was like, okay, what's a funny comment I can say? But I've realized it's like this has gone on for a solid 2 seconds now. I've lost my window.
Duh. Okay. Well, then
I don't know, boss.
I guess I'll lead us right into it. At It Remade on Twitter, They Remade It at gmail.com, They Remade It on Instagram, and follow us, like us, leave comments on any of your podcasting platforms. We're on iTunes, obviously, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Spotify, all the good ones.
Here, there, everywhere.
Podomatic, Podbean, yeah, you name it, we are probably there. So, go check it out.
We are the herpes of podcasts. We get around.
Yep, we cannot be erased. No matter how hard you try, Spreaker.
You've tried to get us rid of us? No, we keep coming back.
We will
I guess,
never
I don't know.
leave.
They I don't think they've done anything to us, have they?
No, they haven't.
Okay. We love you. Please don't get rid of us.
Please.
Yeah, I'd say. Is that all the socials?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. It's hard to keep track. I have and plus it's been a little while.
No, we got the three. We got the three socials, and then we got all the places we are for podcasts.
Gotcha. Just wanted to make sure, because otherwise I'd be interrupting you when I say, as always, I am your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
And have a spooky night, or whatever. I don't know how to do spooky send-offs.
Bleh. It's like a Jewish Dracula.
Have a good night. Happy Halloween.
Frankenstein.
You're putting me on.
No, it's pronounced Frankenstein.
Do you also say Froderick?
No, Frederick.
Well, why isn't it Froderick Frankenstein?
It isn't. It's Frederick Frankenstein.
I see.
You must be Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.